Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Thank you for all of the questions that you have sent from the last video. What we actually have done is that I have invited Captain Shubham Arya. Captain Shubham Arya has an experience in the aviation industry of more than 5 years. He has worked as a ground instructor, as a sim instructor, as an ATC controller, and as an AFI in 3 different flying schools. He has ample of experience to answer the queries that you guys have sent through your questions. So we have summarized those questions into small other questions and have tried our level best that all of you guys get the answers that you want.
So today we have with us Captain Shubham Arya, and we'll be answering all of your questions through a small medium of podcast. So we'll be beginning with the questions right away. So sir, the majority of the students were asking the questions related to flying training was first of all how to actually select a flying school. Like what are the different things that a student should focus upon while choosing a flying school?
So I think, as per a general recommendation, one of the most important things to consider is your own budget. Because nowadays there's a lot of variation in the flying costs. Some schools have an average, a total package of somewhere around 35-40 lakhs, whereas some of them have a package of more than 50-55 lakhs. So it's a little variable on that. The second most thing is whether you want to go for a cadet or a conventional program. So that changes the perspective a lot in selecting a flying school. The third thing is what I would personally recommend is everyone should shortlist a few schools based on the budget and then visit those flying schools and see how the infrastructure is, how the flying is, maybe talk to a few senior cadets or some of the alumni over there and figure out how the process is going over there, how they run their daily operations. So based on that, you can select the school. The a few other important factors would be the fleet that is there, how many aircrafts are there, how many are operational, how many are actually flying every single day, how many are in maintenance for namesake. It's a little variable here and there in every school. So it completely depends on a lot of variable factors: number of students, the student instructor ratio, the fleet, number of students for every aircraft, how the school is running their operations, what is their reputation in the market, the quality of training. So majority of these things you can only figure out if you actually visit the school and then have a look at it by yourself. Maybe spend a day or two over there at their base, see their operations, talk to people over there, and then figure it out.
So sir, basically when I was searching for my flying school, the main first source that I wanted was ki how can I know ki how many flying schools are there? So then I would actually inquire about the budgets and everything. So is there a proper way to how to know ki?
Yeah, so for people who are doing their CPL in India, we have, the DGCA website is there. So on the DGCA website, we have a list of approved flying schools, which are approved FTO, a list of approved FTOs that we have. So when we, go through that list, we'll find the names of all the flying schools that are there in India, which are approved by DGCA. So the best place is, the first thing to do is go over there, check that list, shortlist a few out of maybe those 20, 25, 30 schools, whatever the list has. Shortlist a few schools out of them, see their websites, visit them, communicate with them, and then visit those schools and then choose your best option out of it.
Okay. So, sir, while you were explaining, you also one of the another most asked question was the difference between a cadet pilot program and a conventional pilot program. So the perspective, as you worked in China, so you must also have perspective ki what is the difference between the training quality of a normal cadet pilot and of a normal conventional pilot and a cadet pilot. So from the perspective of first of all getting a job security and second the quality of training, can you elaborate that a little bit?
So this particular thing is a little bit more complicated than people know. Some think that the cadet program has a job security, but it's not as such. There are certain minimas that you have to meet. There are certain training requirements that you have to achieve even as a cadet. So if you want to get if you want to get selected in the cadet pilot program, there is the same selection process where you have to give a written exam. You have to give the, let's say for the Indigo cadet pilot, you have to give the adapt exam. Then you have to give a group discussion and do the interview. After all these stages, if you're selected, then you will be able to join their cadet program. And then even in the training process, they have a certain minima that you have to get solo till this particular number of hours. If you exceed that, then you'll be kicked out of the program. And they keep a very detailed track of your progress in the training part. So that process is being shared by the flying school to Indigo. Okay. And each cadet is being tracked by the airline as well. Okay. So in the end, what happens if you're not reaching up to a particular minima as per their requirements, then there's a very big possibility you might be kicked out of the cadet pilot program as well, right? The only particular thing that people consider good is in the cadet pilot program, it's better to join it if you have that amount of money to spend. The second thing is if there is an age factor, because airlines have maximum age limit, sometimes around 30, 35, 40 years depending on their requirements. So if people of the older age, they can expect they'll be much on a better path if they go through the cadet pilot program. Right? But if you're, let's say, just out of school, a younger person, or just finished your graduation, maybe around 20, 21 years old, it's much preferable if you go for the conventional program, because it gives you a lot more control over your budget, over your timings, right? So let's take a comparison for both. A cadet pilot program runs on a specific timeline that, let's say, 1.5 years or 2 years, you have to complete that entire course. You have to be completely dedicated for it, right? A conventional program is something that you can do at your own pace, right? The budget is comparatively very different. So let's say an example, the cadet pilot will cost maybe somewhere around 1 CR, and the conventional might cost you maybe around 45 or 50 lakhs, something like that, for the basic CPL program. The cadet pilot program, on the other hand, includes type rating and the further process and all that, right? If you do it through the conventional method, you go for a type rating yourself later on after CPL, that will cost you another 15 to 20 lakhs depending on where you do it, right? So that sums up to 70 lakhs. And then further, if you get selected into any airlines, depending on their selection process, there might or might not be a few little miscellaneous charges here and there. So still, talking on an overall perspective, you save quite a sufficient amount of money when you're going through the conventional program. But again, you don't have an LOI, you don't have a job guarantee. You have to wait in the market for vacancies to come up, and then you apply for them, and then you go through the entire process. On average nowadays, I've also seen that the conventional students have a much faster pace of completion compared to the cadet pilots, because once you do your CPL in the cadet pilot course, your process still, there's a sufficient waiting time after the completion of CPL for your ground classes, for your type rating slots, for everything. So the further process with the airline, it's comparatively taking a lot of time nowadays than conventional cadets. So I've seen people who are through, in part of the cadet pilot program, I've seen conventional students, and the conventional students are already flying in the airlines, and the cadet pilots are still in process. Right? So again, it completely depends on your budget. Your age, I would say, is relatively important because of the maximum limit, and then your particular perspective on what you want to see. If you want to have a sort of a safer program ahead, then a cadet program is comparatively much suitable. Conventional is more like a hit and try method, or maybe a little riskier way of doing it, if you want to call it that way. But it completely depends on your skills, your knowledge, amount of effort, your luck, because at the beginning of your training, you might be at a different stage. Towards the end of your training, the market could be completely different. It's completely variable.
So from this answer, another question that comes for the cadet and the conventional pilot program is that the conventional pilot program, as you said, it provides you an opportunity to actually get to the airlines much faster than as compared to the cadet pilot program also. But there might be some students who actually lag behind in conventional. But in cadet, like, all the people go through the same way, and everyone is assured that their training will be completed in specified time. So as you said, the job market, the cadet pilot program actually fixates you just to the job as an airline captain or as an airline pilot. And the conventional program offers you, after the CPL, all the different opportunities that there are. So I would like to know, sir, as per the current job market, what are the different opportunities that a student has after completing a CPL?
So after CPL, let's say if you're going through the cadet pilot, then you're just going directly in the airlines, right? A fixed bond period of maybe 3 or 5 years. But if you're doing a conventional program, you can choose to do a variety of things after that, right? Depending on your age, depending on the market. So you can maybe become. General aviation is not very common in India as such as of now, but there are many opportunities that are still out there. Then you can choose to do some you can go in charters if you want, right? You can go do some smaller aircraft flying. You can become an instructor if you want. Start the training part yourself. Still continue flying the smaller aircrafts, right? So we can basically also go for government opportunities if there are like maybe through CDSE if you have done your graduation. So you can give a CDSE exam and you're a CPL holder, so you can apply for some of the vacancies in the military through that. Other than that, corporate is very rare because we don't have it very common in India, and there's a lot of experienced people who are already there, who've established their position, so it's not easy to get into that particular field. The other thing is many of the people nowadays ask for experience. So initially as a CPL holder, you just have 200 hours. It's not easy building your experience. The most common things that people nowadays go for is either they do their type rating immediately after their CPL, or they become instructors in different flying schools to build up their flying hours.
So, out of the different opportunities, sir, you are a part of the training sector of the aviation right now. So, sir, I would like to ask you, ki after completing your CPL, how difficult you found it to get a job in the training sector? Like, job market, how actually is it lucrative from your experience? Ki you can get directly a job in the training sector or not?
So it's a little different than what people expect. It's not really very difficult as such. So basically after your CPL, it depends a lot on the market. Okay, the market is very variable. It goes up and down all the time, right? There have been my colleagues who have had airline vacancies right after their CPL, and during my time the market was a little dull. So the airline vacancies were there, but again it depends on your personal interest, right? Whether you want to directly go for the jets, or you want to do something else, or you want to explore a little bit, or maybe build your experience or build your foundation a little more, right? So it completely depends on your perspective. What I did personally was I just called up different flying schools. I tried to look for a vacancy. Initially I was quite inclined towards becoming an AFI and or maybe a sim instructor, or maybe get some of the other something out of nothing at least. I was just trying to find my own path, right? Because I have not worked in those roles before. After CPL I didn't work in those roles, so I wanted to get to know whether which particular aspect of aviation would be more suitable for me, right? I could have gone for type rating. I could have applied for airline jobs as well, but I didn't feel like that at that time. I felt as if I was not confident enough with myself after 200 hours to specifically just hit that particular spot at such a big change being there. So I thought why not build the foundation, get your own skills up a little more. So initially then I started as a ground instructor in one of the flying schools, right? There were jobs as in private coaching classes and all that, but that's a different thing altogether. That's not something official, right? But I want to do something associated with the actual field, associated with something that is going on officially. So that was one FTO, and I started working there as a ground instructor, and I worked there for a year almost, and it was a pretty decent experience. A lot of things I learned besides just flying aspect. And I learned I built my communication skills. I learned how to bring the things together, how to explain the concepts to the different cadets and students, and then how to handle a variety of students. That was one of the most important aspects, because you meet a different ton of people in the market, right? And then you yourself understand those things, but then how do you explain it to another person, right? Or how do you explain it to a group of 10, each having their own perspective, right? Some might be very fast learners, some might be extremely slow, some might not understand English that well. So it was very variable, but I gained a lot of insights through that. Then after a particular while, I started I did my patter. I worked a few different roles. I was working as a sim instructor, I was working as an ATC controller. So I gained experience through all that as well, and then I started in the field of aviation as an assistant flying instructor.
Okay.
So then I realized that the flying aspect of learning as a student and teaching as an instructor is completely different.
Yes.
A lot of things we learned in our patter training. So patter training is something that we did as an instructor before we became AFIs, and a lot of things we learned there, and then the same things we implemented during the training to make sure the cadets were learning in the best manner possible.
Okay. So
So considering the job market, again, it depends on your perspective, your choice, what you want to do specifically. Some factor, maybe even your age, okay? Because a person who's maybe, let's say, around 29, 30 years old would not preferably go for becoming an AFI. They would rather push to go in the airlines,
yes.
right? Because then the age limit will be there.
yes.
So that is another thing. So it's completely variable.
Okay. So, sir, I just want to come back to the question of how to become an AFI, but I will come back to that later. I just want to ask you, sir, ki, in the training sector that you are in, how is the market right now? Like, the jobs are there? Like, is it lucrative enough?
Yeah, so as of now, the market is pretty decent. Honestly speaking, it's one of the relatively fast growth periods for aviation. The Ministry of Civil Aviation is pushing a lot. The Department of DGCA, everybody's all working together to help the market grow a lot. And India's seen immense growth in the past few years because of certain airlines, Indigo, SpiceJet, Air India. Everybody sort of working together. Is a very big market, and there is an immense vacancy for instructors, for pilots in the airlines. Yes, there might be the process might be a little slower on some parts due to maybe some backlog or something like that, but overall, generally speaking, the amount of aircrafts that we have coming in every week or every month for different airlines, and the way the market is growing right now, it's looking as if we will have jobs at least for the next decade for everybody in the market, right? And the jobs are there, yes, but then you also need to have those skills, right? So vacancies will be there, but then you should be good enough to clear the exams, to put in your effort, clear the adapt, clear the different interviews and group discussion stages, right? It's not like the airlines will just pick out anyone and everyone. They will try to filter out, take the best. If they want 10 pilots, they have 1,000 applicants. They have to do the filtration process. So you need a job, you have to push yourself above the common crowd by doing things which not everybody is doing, by pushing yourself, by putting in the effort, right? But the jobs are there regardless. There are sufficient amount of jobs in the market for instructors, for pilots, for instructors in every school, because nowadays we also have a lot of new flying schools coming up, and the previous ones are also having a lot of growth, right? So the vacancies are there, definitely. We have a pretty good market right now. Let's just hope we don't lose another airline. That is the very critical aspect of it. So we're just hoping for that. Other than that, we have a lot of potential.
So this assures me, and I'm sure that everyone who is watching this video, it gives us the assurance that we have come to the right field at the right time. So as a student pilot, I think if there are opportunities, I'll do my level best to make sure that I can get those things. But the market must be there so that I can actually go there and get it. Another question is from the students who are actually intending to just begin their flying training or are searching for their flying schools, are basically doing their exam classes right now. So they wanted to know that what are the things that they can do to actually prepare for their flying training while they have not yet joined the flying schools. What are the things that they can focus upon and make sure they can get most out of their flying training?
So to get the most out of your flying training, it's not very complicated as such, but what I would suggest is, since many of the students clear most of their exams beforehand, or some of them are still on the halfway through it, they should keep on revising their basic concepts, okay, because the basics are actually used in flying. If we are, let's say, talking about meteorology, that the things that we are studying for that particular subject for the DGC exams, it's not just for clearing the exams. The same concepts are actually used while flying as well.
Okay.
Right? The same goes for navigation, regulations, and everything, every single topic that we are studying. It's all related to what we are doing practically out there, right?
Yes.
It won't be visible on the page as such, but practically when you're doing it, everything comes together and makes sense. So it's like a compilation of everything, right? Whenever we are flying, we're looking out for weather every single day. We're reading the meta reports. Whenever we're going for cross countries, we're doing the navigation procedures, the same things we learned in navigation. For regulations, we're following everything that is out there. For technical, we have our aircraft structures, flaps, design, lift, drag, everything that is there, right? So all the concepts, if you keep on pushing on your basics, you will have it on the fingertips and you'll be able to grasp those things much easier. And my personal suggestion is always to clear all your exams beforehand, before you join a flying school, because that actually helps you take in the inputs much faster, because you're already aware of all those things, and you can pick it up much faster compared to somebody who's absolutely ab initio to the field, right? So it makes a lot of difference if you've been through the theoretical part of it. It's not exactly the same, but it makes a lot of sense if you've cleared the theoretical part in the practicals.
So I totally agree with you. From the student's perspective, I can also agree with you that the regulations, meteorology, navigation, technical general, all the subjects that I actually cleared before my flying training, it was quite helpful, because it's not like some other courses or graduation in which we study very irrelevant stuff we don't actually have to apply while we are doing our jobs. But once we get a CPL, the theoretical part is very relevant to the flying training that we actually do.
Exactly.
So the technical part, to understanding how the flap works, the mechanics of flight, they actually were very helpful for me to understand while I was giving the inputs to my aircraft, how it was behaving. The theoretical knowledge actually helped me to improve my flying.
It does make a lot of difference, because it's like the basic foundation, right? Your instructors, depending on your flying school, of course, your instructors might not teach you everything. Your instructors might or might not have enough time to teach you everything. It's a little variable. Okay? I'm not saying that instructors are good or bad. There's no comparison. Everybody teaches in their own manner, right? But the main thing is, you are the person who has to learn. So you're someone who has to put in the essential and the extra effort to learn everything. Right? Everybody's, let's say, putting a 50% effort, for example. If you want to move a little ahead of everybody, you have to push yourself more than that. Right? You can watch videos, you can watch content. There are different books that you can refer to. There's one, flying training book by Poolies, which is a very basic but relevant book, which even instructors use for training the students. So that is also something that students can read and start reading up, because it helps with flying a lot. It has details on all the basic exercises that we cover in your flying training part. So not exactly the same, again, because the theoretical part is always a little different than the practical one, but it will help you be mentally prepared for what is about to come, and how you prepare for your sorties. Let's say you have a particular sortie, you read about it beforehand, you try to understand, maybe take a briefing from your instructor beforehand. Obviously they'll give you a briefing, but they are occupied, so you try and find them, run behind them for the briefing. Try to watch videos. There's sufficient content available everywhere to find out about the stuff. And then a lot of videos, you can watch CBTs of which it's available for your initial DGC exams. So many people use CBTs for CPL or ATPL exam preparations. You can use that as well to understand your instruments or aircraft, engine and other systems better. So a little mixed perspective, a lot of things to do, but yes, all the effort comes from the student perspective.
So sir, as you've been in different flying schools, one question that I always had in my mind when I was doing my ground classes, from the perspective of a flying school, does an instructor looks in a different way to a student who has cleared his exams and to a student who has not cleared his exams? He's still left with the exam. So does the flying school prefer the students who have cleared their exams and actually boost their flying or something like that?
It actually depends on a lot of factors. It's not as simple as people might think. It depends on the fleet, depends on the number of students that we have, depends on different instructors. So every person will have their own perspective, right? It's not as simple as it seems. But again, the thing is that yes, overall, from a larger perspective, it is preferable to have students who have their exams cleared, because we have seen a general trend that they are able to grasp things much faster, and we have seen a trend where we are able to push them much faster on the flying pace, right? We know that okay, this person has cleared all their exams, his or her flying won't be stopped at around 100 or 150 hours. Simple as that, right? And what people or an organization or flying training organization wants is to push the number of hours as much as possible, to give the quality training, to make sure all the students are completing as soon as possible, right? So it's a balance between quality and speed, right? That we try to maintain as much as possible, right? We can't deteriorate either one. We have to maintain the quality of teaching, quality of the standards of the flying school, and also keep a balance on the time, the speed. We've given a average timeline of, let's say, 1.5 year to a cadet. We try to push as much as possible to complete during that period. Depends on weather, aircraft availability, number of students, obviously, but it is a general perspective that people who've cleared their exams will always, definitely get pushed faster than people who haven't.
So when I was searching for my flying school, sir, a lot of inputs came to me regarding you must look at how the weather of that place is, you must look whether how the aircrafts are maintained, go there, check the journey log books of the aircraft, go there and ask them what are the checks they are doing, are they maintaining proper safety concern services or not. But these things didn't make much sense to me while I was looking at the flying schools. What is the journey logbook? I do not know. How will I know if the aircrafts are properly maintained or not? And I just wanted to know the simpler things which a student pilot can actually see and know if this is happening, the safety concerns are okay. If this is happening, so these basic things which a student which has not yet entered flying and have no practical experience how actually it happens, can actually look for those factors and realize this flying school, after selecting my budget and everything, out of the flying school which are in my budget, this is the best for me.
So the most basic things that somebody who's not aware about aviation, let's say some of our parents who are not from aviation altogether, people who are completely new to the field, how do they judge whether that flying school is accurate or not, right? It's good enough or not? From my perspective, it would be let's say the school has 10 aircrafts. You just go and see how many aircrafts are actually flying and how many are on ground. Okay, you talk to the students who are already there. Talk to the students who have passed out of that school. See the reputation of that school in the market through Google. Just Google. Put the details of that school, find out about that school, look at social media, look at the responses, look at the maybe testimonials of different cadets if you find them online. Nowadays everything is all about social media marketing, right? So nearly all the schools are pushing a lot on that perspective. You go on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, anywhere, if you just Google it up, you'll be able to find details of every school. Right? So that thing makes a lot of difference. So as an initial person, I would suggest the best way is to talk to people who are already there, or the people who've passed out from there, right? That is one of the best ways to gain information, because the instructors, the staff, the people who are working there as employees might share a different perspective, right? The cadets are the ones who are actually experiencing what is happening at a flying school, right? People who are already there, go and talk to them. People who have passed out, try to find them online, contact them through different sources. You can find it all on LinkedIn pretty easily nowadays, right? just go and ask them the basic questions. How is it? How is the fleet? 10 aircrafts, how many are flying every day?
Yes.
You can just look over there. You can ask the maintenance people, because when you're going to visit a school,
Yes.
you have access to all the things right in front of you.
Correct.
Right? You can just go and ask any of the questions, and nobody will be, hiding information as such.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Nobody hides information because nobody is doing anything wrong. Right? There might be some things here and there, but overall, you get the information from a lot of different sources. Right? Other than that, I think it's more about how that school is upholding in the social media in different groups or channels, if you can find it. Probably try to find different videos. You'll find a lot of resources nowadays for most of the schools on maybe YouTube also. You can just search up.
Yes.
There are many people who have started sharing their experiences of the different flying schools, so you'll be able to find the details pretty easily. It's not as complicated as before. Nowadays it's much easier, in fact, to find a flying school suitable to your need.
To summarize, it's just collect as much data as you can from the people who are actually there or who have been there. And the second thing is you actually go and visit the schools. That is very important. And this actually helped me a lot. I have visited multiple schools before choosing the one that I am into right now. And one of the ways that I actually use to get in touch with the students, so just simply go to the Instagram handle, find the post, students that are following that. You'll find their students and just text them. You can text them on Instagram and just get in touch with them. And I think that most of the people are happy to just give simple information. Ki how is the thing, and they are ready to help you.
Definitely, it's pretty easy. People, like I told you, it's all about marketing now, right? The more marketing, the more feedback and reviews the school shares about their cadets, that attracts the newer crowd, the younger generation, the newer people. All are using social media more than the previous ones, right? So if anybody is looking for schools, 10 schools will pop up. Then you just go on social media, search up their handles, and find the students. Let's say you find a testimonial of a particular cadet, just you'll find their Instagram handle also over there, and you can just get in touch with them directly. Okay, I saw your Instagram post. What is your feedback on this school? How is the fleet? And nowadays some of the few factors also to consider is what type of fleet the school has. Okay, and what type of systems do those particular aircrafts have. Let's say nowadays there's this Garmin system that's very famous, right? The old conventional way was they had different instruments, and six pack it was called, and it was manual. It was also informative and good to use, but then again we are trying to change the scenarios because now we are moving towards a more advanced world as such, right? We are now more focused on pushing the cadets for airlines. Everybody nearly has the Garmin systems nowadays, right? The more advanced ones, obviously. So when students are learning in those systems during their training phase itself, they're well versed with what they can expect in the airline. Something similar, not exactly the same, but something similar to that. So they'll be able to grasp those things much better.
Sir, one question from the cameraman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, as an instructor perspective, say, what do you think? Girls are better pilot or boys are better pilot?
Another smart question from another student pilot. The
You just repeat the question.
So, sir, basically, he is asking, from an instructor's perspective, from your experience, how have you found it? Are girls better pilot or boys are better pilots?
So, it's a controversial question, but generally speaking, there's no comparison, okay, as such between the men and the women. We don't compare. Everybody is sort of good in their own way, right? There are people who are slower, there are people who are fast. I've seen the male cadets who are extremely slow and poor in performance. I've seen female cadets likewise. I've seen some good female cadets also in performance. So it's a little variable. There's no you can't really compare that the male cadets are better than the female ones. It's all a mix.
Now, sir, the next question that most of students want to know more about is generally we just go for CPL with IR and ME, but we know ki why we need a CPL, but what is the requirement of an instrument rating and multi-engine rating, and why do we actually do it?
So the instrument rating is basically to train, to see whether you're proficient enough to use the instruments on the aircraft, whether you can fly looking inside rather than looking outside. All your entire training is visual flying, right? But the instrument rating is specifically there to see if you're proficient to look inside and fly. It can be due to multiple reasons, due bad weather or low visibility, anything like that, right? So an instrument rating is actually a requirement nowadays, and it's become necessary because all airline flights are instrument flying. They don't fly visually as such. So all the time that they log there, it's all instrument time. They're all flying on instruments, autopilot, all the instruments. They're flying at very high levels. They don't have visual references over there, so they have to fly with the instruments.
So it's a requirement there whenever a job.
Mostly it's a requirement, and whenever you go for your type rating, whenever you go for your further training in the airlines, they will do their own instrument rating checks over there as well, where they will train you on the bigger jets, on the bigger aircrafts, and do your instrument rating on those particular jets as well, right? Speaking about multi-engine, on the other hand, it's an Airbus requirement if you want to go for that particular fleet, but nowadays it's become very common with every airline asking for a multi-endorsement. Why? Because people who've just done single engine, some of the rumors that I've heard, I'm not entirely sure about it, but some of the rumors that I've heard in the market is that some of the people who just did single engine, they're not able to cope with the number of tasks or number of things to do in the multi-engine exercises, right? When they go for type rating and all, they're not able to handle the different things that are there, the multi-crew cockpit environment, and then asymmetrics, for example. Asymmetric is basically when you simulate one engine failure and the other one is still working for the multi-engine. So the exercises and the way a multi-engine is flown is very different than a single engine. It's comparatively a lot faster. All of the things that you do in single engine, they're happening a lot faster, and now you have two engines, right? So becomes a little more complicated, right? So besides the Airbus requirement, nowadays airlines are preferring people who have the multi-engine endorsement, right? So it's always preferable, not mandatory, but preferable to do your multi-engine endorsement as well during your CPL training.
So it just keep your cards open when you
Exactly.
when you go into the market.
Yeah. So it allows you to keep your cards open. That's a very big factor. Just like when you do your IR, when you do a conventional program, when you do your multi-engine, you're just keeping your cards open. You have many different options rather than being fixated on one particular thing, right?
Yes.
You do a multi-engine rating, you're open for Airbus, Boeing, both, right? As an example, if you don't do your multi-engine, you're strictly not allowed for Airbus at all, right? You just get restricted to the other fleets which don't need a multi-engine rating as such. So that gives that becomes a very big disadvantage. So it's always preferable to have that on your license.
Okay. So it's a requirement of the jobs that you need a CPL with an instrumenting and multi-engine rating, so that बाद में you don't find कि a job came but you are not actually eligible for it.
Exactly. Nowadays it's something like that. And everybody in the market prefers somebody with a multi-engine rating, right? Later on, let's say you're becoming an instructor, you already have a multi-engine rating, you can just go on and do your further training, and on the higher levels of instructor, let's say you become an FI, right? That's a flight instructor, somebody who can do night and multi-training as well. So you will be able to do that. You don't have to do the endorsement training all over again over there, right? During that particular time, if you have any airline vacancies which require a multi-rating, you're also eligible for that. So gives you a lot of options.
Yes.
And it's always preferable, it's not a very huge difference in the costs. It is a big difference, but not very huge, but something that gives you a lot of options later on.
Okay. Another question that students were asking, ki after completing your CPL, how to become an AFI? Like, what are the different requirements to become an AFI, and a little insight to how it actually is to become an AFI.
Right. So, if you want to become an instructor right after your CPL, you just have to go for PATR training. Okay, PATR training is essentially 20 hours of ground training and 20 hours of flying training that is there with a senior instructor, a CFI, essentially Chief Flying Instructor, who is PATR approved by DGCA. Okay. So basically you contact different flying schools, whoever has slots, you can just go there. The senior instructor over there will be taking your 20 hours minimum, 20 hours of ground classes, where they'll teach you about the different 12 to 14 topics that are there for becoming an instructor.
Okay.
So they will teach you on the ground topics. I'll give you a few examples. Let's say elements of effective teaching, classroom teaching techniques, then use of FSTDs, human factors, then techniques of instruction, student behavior, how to understand the different types of students that we face during training, how to handle students of different ages, right? So there might be students who are much elder than I am, students younger to me, right? How to handle them, when to understanding a student's behavior in the cockpit and outside the cockpit. And then how whether they need a change of instructor, how to analyze that, their training progress, everything. So those 20 years of ground classes are actually much more relevant than the flying perspective, right? Because it helps you understand and build a environment in the cockpit with the student, where the student is comfortable with you, where you are comfortable with the student, and you are able to analyze everything as an instructor, right? So from a student perspective, is very different. You just take up the knowledge of the instructor, whatever they're telling you, just listen and try to do the same maneuvers and all. But from an instructor's perspective, is very much more detailed than that, right? So this 20 years of ground classes are done before the flying training is done. And then once those classes are completed, then we go for 20 hours of patter flying. So where we as instructors will sit on the right hand seat, and the senior instructor will be sitting on the left hand seat pretending to be a student. And we will be teaching them the basics, all the exercises and the syllabus that is there. So it's a 20-hour syllabus that we follow. So that we will be teaching to that particular instructor. If we are missing out on certain points or certain things while teaching those exercises, then that particular senior instructor will be giving us advice on that and telling us that okay, you can improve on these things and you can add these things to your training patter. Okay. So patter as such is something that we speak out while we are teaching to the cadet, right? How to give them the perspective of taking a fix, orientation points, what are the checks, what are the things you can look for visually through the instruments, cross reference, all that. So it's a combination of everything, right? Once you're done with that 20 hours of patter flying, you have to do your AFI oral exam with DGCA. So DGCA takes an interview. Either you can do it virtually on I think 2 or 3 different places it happens virtually, but in Delhi if you give it, then the Delhi center has it a face-to-face interview in the Delhi office itself, in the Delhi DGCA office. So there will be a panel of maybe 4 or 5 DGCA officials who will be taking your interview, and they'll just ask you the basic questions about whatever you did during your patter training, about CPL, the basics of CPL, metric, basic technical and all that, all related to whatever you've learnt during your patter training mostly, right? And if you clear that oral exam, then you can go for an AFI check. So that AFI check is sort of like a test which you have to do with another senior instructor, not with the same person, not with the same CFI who's patter approved, but with a different CFI who's patter approved. And he or she will take your check and see whether you're competent enough to fly as an instructor, right? So that AFI check is to be done with another person. Once you do that flying test, so that check is basically a flying test, right? The instructor will also take an oral interview, and then if you clear the oral interview, they'll take you for the flying test. It can be of any duration, and minimum duration as far as I'm aware is 1 hour. And once you clear that particular flying test, then you can submit your licenses in DGCA for approval as an instructor. So that's the general process of becoming an AFI, right?
So it's very similar to getting a CPL. Like you do your ground classes, you do your flying training, then you give your another oral test, then another check, and then eventually you get your license.
Yes, something similar to that, but again for an instructor. But once you are done with all of it, you get an AFIR license from DGCA, and then you are actually approved to give out training to cadets as per the privileges of the AFIR license.
And so while this training is, this is the first time you actually sit on the right side of the
Yeah,
cockpit
exactly.
and fly the aircraft.
Yeah. So it's comparatively a little different the first time when you do it, because the left hand perspective is what we've had during the CPL training and an entire 200 hours. But after that, when you suddenly are on the right hand seat, it's a little different, but you get used to it and it's pretty nice.
Achha.
Yeah.
You get used to it. It's not very difficult to get
Not
used
very difficult, it's just a little different. Not difficult, but different.
Okay.
So maybe you'll take maybe 1 or 2 sorties to get used to it, but then it's pretty nice. And then you sort of become used to the right and left seat both. So you can, you become habitual of flying from both the sides.
Okay.
It's something like that.
And sir, how useful it is to become an AFI to actually, if my end goal is go to the airlines, it is actually, can it be suggested to me that first I become an AFI and then I move towards the airline? Is it a choice that one should prefer, or one should go directly to the airline?
So it actually depends on the market as well. When you complete your CPL, at that time the market could be variable, right? It's possible that you might have a CPL vacancy immediately as soon as you complete your CPL, so you could go for that as well directly. And let's say there are no vacancies, and hearing the rumors in the market, it's not expected for another 6 months. So why would you rather sit at home and waste those 6 months at home, right? You can just go do your PAT or maybe start flying as an instructor. That will help you build your confidence, build up your skills as a pilot. It will help you, build your hours as well. That is one of the another important factors. Although nowadays single engine hours are not as relevant because there's a lot of competition in the market, but it helps you build your confidence in the cockpit. It helps you build your CRM skills, because now you're not just listening as a student, but you're also teaching somebody new.
Yes.
Right? So you have to coordinate with them, have a proper handover of controls, have proper communication with them,
Yes.
have an environment where you're not getting angry at them, they're not getting frustrated, and you're just building a bond together as an instructor and a student. Right? So working in that environment becomes very important then, and that becomes also relevant when you go to the airlines later on. The airline is a full multi-crew cockpit environment.
Yes.
You have to work with another person, so you can build that skill of working with another person over here.
Yes.
During this training. And main thing, you're building your flying hours, you're utilizing that time, you're earning a good amount of money as well as an AFI during that period.
So sir, how much time does it, on an average, it takes for a person to actually get AFI or endorsed on their license? Through all this process, how much time does it take?
It would be wrong to say that it gets done very early. A general timeline would be maybe 3 to 6 months. That is what I would say, because it takes about a month or 2 months to complete your 20 hours of training as well as those ground classes. Besides that, you will have to wait for the next AFI oral exam interview date with DGCA, so that could probably be immediately after your patter, or could be on a gap, so that uses up some time. Then the result comes out another 15 days after that on average. So you can, then the license, once you get the result, you have to go for your AFI check, and then the license, you apply for it, it will take another month. So overall, from the beginning of your patter training till the end, till you get your license, AFI license in hand, it could take anywhere between 4 to 6 months if you are lucky.
Now, sir, as a student, one he thinks of, I'll become an AFI. So after becoming an AFI, what are the different opportunities that he has in the training sector? That, like, as an instructor, what are the different levels and promotions in a flying school that a student can expect in his career?
So an AFI is basically an assistant flight instructor, the basic lowest level of instructor that is there. Above that, there is somebody known as a flight instructor or an FI, right? That is the next stage. There is a certain minimum requirement for it. As per DGCA, minimum 200 hours of instructional hours we need, and then some other requirements are also there. An AFI cannot fly in night, right? And we cannot release the first solos. But an FI can fly in night as well as release first solos, and also do some of the checks, which is the 250 nautical mile cross country or 120 nautical mile cross country. Okay. Above that, the third stage is the second, the second highest level, which is the deputy CFIs. So they have a lot of requirements that need to be fulfilled before somebody can become a deputy CFI. and then the last stage, the highest level of instructor that is there, is a chief flying instructor or a CFI.
Yes.
Okay, so the chief flying instructor is mostly, he or she is sort of the head of the organization. They are more involved in making sure the organization is running in a proper manner, more towards the management part rather than just the flying part. It depends on the organization as well. It's a little variable.
Okay.
Right? So I've seen people who are flying 125 hours every month, just as a CFI, doing the checks, because there's immense requirement. So it's a little variable here and there, but these are the 4 different stages. So an AFI, then an FI, then deputy CFI, then a CFI. These are the 4 different stages that you can have when you become an instructor, taking their own time. And generally, maybe depending on your flying school requirements also, you can probably reach to the stage of a CFI within a period of 2 to 3 years, depending on your flying school's requirement.
That's a possibility, but
Yeah, it is a possibility, but it highly depends on your flying school's requirement.
okay, if they want to promote you and
Exactly.
they can
So it's a little variable, little complicated, but here and there, these are the 4 basic stages that are there.
So, sir, the next question, this is also one of the most frequently asked things, where should we do our flying from, India or abroad? So, is there any practical difference between the quality of training in India and in the US or the Australia, the other countries that people actually do their CPL in?
So doing your flying training specifically, in different places, it does not make a lot of difference as such. Okay, why people do that is because either there are not enough slots in, let's say, for example, we are in India right now. So most of the flying schools now in India are very overcrowded, because there's so much demand, so many people all of a sudden want to become pilots, that there's already too many students in the flying schools. Then there is a backlog of admissions in the flying schools, right?
Yes.
So one of the reasons why people start looking for schools outside. Now, the perspective for choosing a flying school outside, there are many good schools. One of the important things to look at is whether that school is approved by DGC or not. Okay.
Because there is an approval.
Yes. So it's always beneficial to see whether, let's say you choose a flying school in the US, whether that US school is approved by DGC or not. Let's say you do a training from an unapproved school. You come back, DGC will say, we don't recognize this school. Then your license is not, it's not valuable at all.
Okay.
Okay. So it's very much important to make sure that school is recognized by DGCA. Then one of the factors that people don't consider is, the costs are definitely different. Some places it might be cheaper, some places it might be a little more expensive than the training in India. But one of the factors to count in is the cost of travel, food and accommodation. So these 3 things become, very expensive if you go outside, let's say to the US. Accommodation and food is one of the most expensive things over there.
Yes.
And they ramp up your cost of CPL training a lot.
Yes.
Right, so it makes a lot of difference. Talking about quality of flying, yes, the general aviation sector in the US is a lot better, right? So you get to gain a lot of experience, you get to land at many different aerodromes, you get to have that experience where you just take off and land from anywhere. But then when you come back to India, there's a conversion process.
Yes.
And the process followed in India is comparatively a lot different than outside. Over here, we have a lot of restrictions, we have a lot of rules and regulations in place. It is for our own safety, yes, but it also changes the things a lot. So many of the people who come from outside for conversion, they don't know a lot of things here. They don't know how to put a flight plan and all that. Pretty basic things that everybody knows here. So it's completely variable.
To the end of this podcast, I would like you to please share some general guidance that you want to share with the students out there who are flying, who are not flying, who are doing their ground trainings.
Thank you for the amazing, questions that everybody gave, and I hope I answered all of them to my best capability. And the field of aviation is very interesting. I just wish you guys all the best, and make sure, do not be in a hurry to choose a flying school. Do not be in a hurry to start your flying. Always follow the proper process. Talk to people. Communicate as much as possible. and make sure you give it your best. It's not difficult if you put in the effort. It's not at all difficult. You can clear your exams easily, you can do your flying easily. In fact, you don't really need classes for DGC exams, only if you put in enough effort. Just read the right content, talk to people, ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions. That is one of the most important things. And I wish you all the very best for your further career in aviation. And thank you.
Heartiest thanks from my side and from all the students to Captain Shubham, Arya, who came here today for the podcast and made it possible. I wish that we were able to deliver you the information that you guys wanted and which will definitely help you in your careers ahead. I will be sharing the link of Captain Shubham Arya's YouTube channel, the books that he has published, and his Instagram handle in the description. So you guys can go out there and check it out. Thank you all for watching this video. Please share your reviews and comments and let us know in the comments that how did you like this and what are the next things that we can actually make for you guys to so that we as a community can go ahead together. This would be all from my side for today. See you all guys. Bye bye.